All right, Johnny. So we have a special guest tonight.
Oh, who is it?
Pretty excited. So, as you know, last year Shopify made a big announcement that they are betting on React Native as their technology for mobile apps, and that they are sponsoring the development of Reanimated 2. And I had the pleasure and honor to join as a consultant on gestures and animations in one of the Shopify app. And this evening, we have Farhan, a VP of Engineering at Shopify, to join us. And how are you, Farhan?
I'm good. It's not evening here, but I can see it's dark over there.
Yes, I think we decided to call our podcast maybe React After Dark.
I like it. I like it. It's only like 2 o'clock here, so still daylight.
And yes, I was pretty excited to join you guys at Shopify. So to be involved, first of all, in like real world use cases and like real world performance scenarios, because I do these proof of concepts, I do these fun animations on my YouTube channel, but it's nice to also get into the weed of real world apps at scale. And since also you guys were involved in the pushing the development of Reanimated 2, that was also like pretty exciting to follow along the whole path of development. And yeah, can you maybe tell us a bit more about how you guys picked React Native and what's the story here?
Yeah, so good lead in. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and that culminated in us choosing React Native for our mobile development platform. First off, we've been fans of your YouTube channel for a while, William. Can It Be Done in React Native is a thing that is discussed often because it used to be the case that a lot of these tools that came around for mobile actually were slowly getting close to the real solution, but weren't actually solving the real problem of what mobile engineers were trying to do. So my background is actually in mobile engineering. I was early employee in VP engineering at a company called Extreme Labs. We built mobile apps for a lot of big brands. And we always worked with clients who eventually wanted to take the code base over, and their focus was always, can we get down to one code base? And so we tried all kinds of tools to figure out if we could deliver an amazing iOS and Android experience just with one code base. And back then, right, Sencha, PhoneGap, HTML5, those were your options, Coney. And anytime we wanted to, figure out whether now was the time, what we did was we just did an A/B experiment, right? So we had pair programming as our main way of writing code, and we would have one pair use one of these cross-platform tools and one pair write using native. And what we learned was every single time after, whether it was 12-week experiment, we would just show the clients, here are the two apps. We wouldn't tell them which is which. Which one do you think you want to continue working on? And they would always pick the native one, right? And that happened for many, many years because what they saw was it was faster, the UI was more flexible, they were farther along in the project, right? All these things were true, and they always chose the native one. And then something interesting happened in 2015 when React Native came out, is that it now became possible to reuse all the learning you had from React, build UI, which is most of mobile engineering, right? It's UI, much more quickly. And then we also noticed that incubators like Y Combinator, where folks were doing lots of experiments, started using React Native to test a lot of their mobile UI and test their ideas much more quickly. And so at Shopify, I got to Shopify in 2019, but I started talking to JML and Toby about this in 2018, which is like, how are you thinking about gaining engineering leverage for mobile? And that's the beginning conversation around thinking about React Native.
I mean, that's really also what drew me to the React Native, is that, I knew React and I was like, I can bring these skills to do native apps. And that's how I was like, okay, I already know how to build React apps, and now I can use it for native apps. That's, yeah.
Yeah, for me it was the same. Just like looking for a solution and try things like Sencha and web apps. When React came around, Of course, you give it a try, but this one really stuck.
Yeah, I was going to say that when we started investigating, right? Because in 2015 we investigated React Native, but it was very early, and you couldn't produce apps that you would be proud of. Like that was actually the line that we said. Like we could probably do this, but it's not going to deliver applications we could be proud of. So in 2019, we then did a bunch of experiments, right? We had our now what's called Shop app. It used to be Arrive, and it was written natively in iOS, and so the team rebuilt it in React Native. We had experiments going on in some of our other applications, right? We had an app called Compass that did a deep dive into all the different tools to figure out which way they should go, and our point of sale. And we decided then to make a big bet around React Native in a bunch of different ways, right? We rewrote Arrive into Shop, React Native. Compass just chose by themselves randomly to use React Native as well, even though they investigated native and Flutter. And the POS team ended up going in both directions. We built an iOS app to go quickly with the team we had and learn. And then we had an Android team that used React Native as their default. And after that 1 year of learning in 2019, we then decided, based on Shopify's tech stack, our React experience, we wanted to go all in on React Native, and that hence the blog post and the announcement in January 2020.
Something, I read the blog post from Airbnb about their experience with React Native, and one thing that came up a lot in this series of blog articles was internally, like the politics of convincing the native developers and so on. Is that something also you experience at Shopify? Is that, or maybe I'm not sure what you're allowed to discuss or not? Or?
Yeah, no. I think it's whenever you make any sort of technology decision, you're going to have people on different sides of that discussion, and sometimes it's because for the problem that they're solving, it actually is a different solution that they need versus the problem we're trying to solve as a company across teams and across a larger set of code and apps that has to be optimized for. And so we, of course, had folks saying, hey, this is going to make sense for this project to do native. This project maybe makes sense for React Native. And so we went back and forth. So what we said was, look, the default is React Native, but if you have a good reason, you can investigate other areas as well. And that allowed us to align everybody around a standard platform. Like one thing that's amazing about how Shopify thinks about this is that we gain leverage by having a few technology choices, going all in on those technologies. Right? And so with React Native, it wasn't just we chose it and I wrote a blog post, right? We hired you, we worked with Software Mansion. I host like the working group. I met with Facebook all the time. We're trying to contribute back to open source. Like there's all kinds of things happening in order to make that a real project for us versus just saying, oh, we're just going to write a blog post and pick this thing. That's not what we did. We went all in and committed resources, money, time to make that a reality.
Yeah, and I can speak. I worked on one particular component that requires gestures and animation, and I can speak to the fact that without Reanimated 2, we couldn't have shipped this component. Like, not even close of being able to ship it. And so there is really like things coming together, right? Where you have to push the effort towards like Reanimated 2 so you can deliver these like high-end user experiences in React Native. And I was wondering if about like native developments, like if it's also maybe one of these things, like also we were talking about this like with Remotion, where you bring in React Native, but maybe if you're a native developer, then it makes you even a better native developer because now you can focus on the things which can only be done in native, and actually we remove from you, like if you bring in React Native into the project, a bunch of stuff where actually it's not like the main value that a native developer is going to bring to the table. Is that like, would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, it's something I think we don't talk enough about, which is the goal of using React Native is not an app that is 100% JavaScript. I think that is actually the misnomer, and it probably comes from a combination of things. One, everyone thinks the only reason to use React Native is so that you can be cross-platform. Like that's one reason, good reason, but it's not the only reason. We see this in like Discord's example where they use React Native for iOS but don't use it for Android. So they have two different apps, but still they use React Native for one. It also comes from the fact that if you are a heavy React team, right? Like both of you came from React. And so the notion of just writing everything in JavaScript because that's what you know is a strong force that we have to make sure as mobile engineers, and mobile engineering has to make sure we are doing the right thing at the right layer. And so if it makes sense to use JavaScript, amazing. Let's use JavaScript. You get all the React people can help. You can get cross-platform help. It's amazing. But if you have something that probably makes sense to do native, maybe, we can talk a little bit about some work we're doing on background jobs, whether it's work around performance-related things that you really can't get around, integrating with native hardware. There are reasons to write native code. And I encourage folks who are listening to this, if you're a native engineer and you're thinking about React Native, to not lose all of the amazing things you understand about native development, and to stay up to date with what these phones can do, because it'll make those apps much, much better, even if you adopt React Native, especially if you adopt React Native.
Developers should see it as an opportunity, because suddenly, for many reasons, because also suddenly the market is open to so many developers who have, I have no native experience. You have some, but I guess you're not a native expert either, right?
I'm not, but I totally agree. In the end, you have to bridge everything to native. Every JavaScript code that you write is actually going to do something on the native side. So yeah, it's really important.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering about is, like you said, you are not just like a consumer of React Native, but you are really also really shaping the ecosystem and pushing it forward. Of course, as such a large company, whenever you use something at scale, you find new challenges and things that have not been solved yet, and you do that by, for example, working with Software Mansion, really being on the cutting edge with Reanimated 2. And you also mentioned that you sometimes talk to people at Facebook to do that. I'm wondering what are like the biggest challenges that you and only you probably face because you're using it at this scale.
That's an interesting one. What are the challenges only we face? I don't know if there's anything unique. One thing that is different about Shopify, like I mentioned, is we try to understand these, whatever the core sets of technologies we've chosen, to a very, very deep and intimate level, meaning we want to make sure we fix things at the right layer. And so if we think, so here's an example. Let's say we're doing something, and this has actually come up where we were working on something, I remember, for the Shop app, and we found a bug that required us to make a change in some core React Native module. Now, some companies might decide to do a workaround. They're like, oh, we found this bug. That's a bug that's known. Until it's fixed, let's just do a workaround. And that's just not how Shopify thinks about it. Like, we want to fix things at the right layer. So we worked with Software Mansion actually to fix that bug in React Native versus just doing a workaround. And so there are some things there that, it's not because I think of our scale. I think it's actually more about our attitude around software, right? The same thing is true. I have an example outside of React Native where we wanted to enable much better performance metrics from MySQL. And there were ways to kind of figure out how to do it around MySQL, but the right thing was to actually fix it in MySQL. And so we patched MySQL. And again, it's more about an attitude of like, let's fix it at the right layer. Maybe it takes longer to do that because, you're not a core contributor to MySQL or to React Native, but when you fix it at the right level, there's leverage for everybody from then on, right? There's no more workarounds. Everybody gets the benefit. The community gets better. More people contribute. More people understand the technology base, so the whole pie gets bigger. And that's what we want to do here with React Native. It isn't just a one-stop shop. Now, you mentioned earlier, William, about like native engineers. One thing I've been super excited about is there's an initial hesitation about learning a new way to do something that you've been doing for a long time. So if you're a native engineer and you're used to Swift or Kotlin, and then mandated from the company, you have to now use React Native. If you approach it that way, I've just met so many native engineers who are like really loving the move to React Native, and like both of you mentioned, they can now focus on the native expertise around the things that really need native, and the rest they get not for free, but learn runs run anywhere around iOS and Android. And so they're really enjoying the move. And it's opened up their eyes to a whole different way of engineering.
More like a bit the rock stars, because they can save the React Native developers who don't know how to do the native, and they can like be the final solution to. So no, that's exciting. So speaking of, like, one of the reason we thought it was a good time to talk with one another is because I saw in January you've made another announcement. So 2021 engineers in 2021. That sounds absolutely insane.
Yeah, that's like what, 8 a day? How many did you hire today?
Somebody messaged me and said, "Oh, that's cool. That's one engineer per working hour of the year." Right? It's about 2,000 hours in the year, working hours, and so you have to hire about one engineer an hour. So, so we just look at our watch at the end. We should have hired another engineer. I think that, the way to think about it is the following. Like, it is a big goal. And one thing that is, every company is different in how they think about it, but we are looking for curious, empathetic, like, people from all walks of life, because that is actually what our merchants are, right? Our merchants, right? 1+ million merchants who come from everywhere, all over the world, and are quite different. We need our employees to be just as diverse and as curious as they are. And we look for folks who we think fit that bill, and then we teach them our technology stack, because not everybody knows Ruby or React or React Native. But if you're curious and have an interest in technology and have done things in the past, that could be a good fit. And so, we like to chat with as many folks as we can to see if that might be the next part of their journey. And so for this year, we have a lot of stuff that we understand we need to build to make our merchants' lives easier and to reduce that friction. And so we want to make sure we hire those folks this year to help us go on that, the multi-year journey that we're on.
React Native developers is watching this video and is looking to apply. What should he do, or what she do? What should she do? Sorry.
Yeah. He or she, yeah. So I think that, there's two things they should do. One is they should go to shopify.com/careers and apply. And we're hiring across North America, APAC, Europe, mostly. Those are like our three, global time zones, because we are fully remote. And so that's an easy way to get into our queue. And then second, they can always DM me as well. In addition to doing that, because that, one, will get them into the queue, and then two, I'm happy to go in and I can always make a note in their profile as well that they DM'd me over Twitter or send me an email. So I think those are good ways. But another good way is work on React Native, right? Contribute to open source, and then you can let us know that in your profile, because that's a good way to get noticed. And again, React Native, Ruby on Rails, production engineering, data scientists. We're hiring all sorts of smart folks everywhere. And the ability to hire remote has really opened up the types of folks that can now work for us in a high fidelity way without having to come into an office.
Something about the diversity of skills and the way I so often think about it, and you tell me if it's like similar for you guys, is that it doesn't matter if you know React or not. It's more about the principles, right? And if you understand like also the big pictures and so on, is that also how you guys think about it? Like it's more about principles and not,
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a combination of things. Like, it's amazing if you've already got these technologies in your toolkit, but not everybody will have those. And so we want to make sure we attract and can help people learn about the different things that are in our technology stack. And so that's why I mentioned, like, we choose a few, right? Ruby on Rails, React Native as the majority of things that happen. In data, it's Python. But we'll help those folks get up to speed, and we'll help those folks understand. So one is understand those technologies, and then two, understand how Shopify uses those technologies. And again, we want to contribute back as well. And so, here's a little plug, right? I'm actually hiring for a React Native open source team as well to work on open source as part of working at Shopify.
I mean, it only makes sense if you want to solve things at the right level and at the right abstraction, you must be in touch with the community, and only makes sense.
So, you're out in the open source, right? You do lots of work in the open source. You do YouTube videos. When you meet engineers, how do you decide if you want to work with them more? Like, are you looking at their code? Are you talking to them? Like, how are you figuring that out? What are the types of things you look for in people you want to work with.
There's you need to have some sort of visibility portfolio because that gives you immediately confidence, in someone you don't know necessarily. And for sure,
Yeah,
also
that's
open
one.
source contributions
So
are
Twitter, did you look at people's code, like they're in the GitHub profile and
good, Johnny. But sometimes when you interact with other developers in pull requests, for instance, maybe on Reanimated and so on, you can really get attracted to people because you're like, wow, I really see that we share the same mindset on things and so on. So, did you have also like GitHub crushes or no?
There are like some open sourcers which I admire and like copy in like how they do things. Like one that comes to mind is like Sindre Sorhus. I'm sure every developer has like him in his node modules 1,000 times
Yes.
because he has 1,000 node modules. And
So it's so funny because, like, for instance, I can picture his avatar because I've seen it so many times. But anyways, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this guy like has it's like so interesting. He like made this 1,000 node modules, and like everybody is saying, "Wow, why would he do that?" Like sometimes he's on top of Hacker News. Wow, this is a 2-line JavaScript module, but like how? And I mean, this 2-line JavaScript module it like doesn't necessarily like prove his skill. So in some way, like his code is not like proof that he is like good, but that's not even what it's about. But like, not just from the code, but like you can more generally what they are trying to create, in which direction they are trying to push something. Is it like creative, how they present it, how is the user supposed to use it, all these things rather than just like the pure programming skill is
That's interesting. So you're saying not just the programming, but how, in this case, this person approaches the problem, communicates about the problem, right? And so what you're describing there is something called range, right? Like this idea that it's not just very deep knowledge in a narrow domain, but actually that potentially they're able to look at, in this case, product as well as engineering that makes them more valuable.
yeah, right. And another thing is like, of course, if you like have like a product and you like market it, how you tell. So I think it also applies for like even if you work in a company, how you communicate to other people, how you are supposed to use the code that you have written. Like, what's the name of the API? Is it like clear? Is it concise? What we're supposed to do, or is it like really abstracted and nobody knows what it's about? That also includes some elements which the code can be the same, but still it can be more useful if you tell the people, hey, I did this because this is good, and then people can feel into that situation and get more use out of it.
I'm not sure if you can speak to that or not, but like to your point, when you guys are in the process of hiring someone, so you are looking obviously at different facets, right? Technical skills, but I assume there are other things you are looking at, right? What
What are those things? So like our process is pretty well documented if anybody searches like Shopify interview process, but we have a really cool way of trying to understand the backgrounds of folks, and it's called the life story. Toby, our CEO, has this really great line where he says, if a bunch of people are coming to a meeting, right, even a virtual meeting, the more different all of their lives are up until the point they join the meeting, the better the meeting will be because they're bringing so many different perspectives. And so the life story is our way to look at that background. One example is if I looked at both of your like LinkedIn's, for example, I can see what you've done, but I don't know why you did those things. And so we're really trying to find the why behind what you did. And the life story is an exploration into your background or on why you did those things. And then, of course, we have a bunch of different things that help us gauge your curiosity and technicality, right? Some of the things are designed to do like a problem solving and see how you think, and we're not worried about the answer so much as like how you get to, how you move forward through the problem, how you gain progress. Other things are focused on your experience, like what if you've been in this situation, how you've approached it. And to be frank, like interviews are not a perfect predictor of performance, and so it's our way of seeing our guess of if you're a fit for Shopify. And that's why we tell people, hey, you can apply again if you didn't get through the process. And we're looking for curious people that were willing to learn on these things. And I really like what you said, which is there are some ways to look at potentially how someone's a fit, whether it's their Twitter demos or they're showing code or GitHub. But that won't be everybody, because not everybody has time to work in open source or time to work and publish their findings. And so we want to open the doors as much as we can to as many folks as possible, right? I did this funny tweet where I said, you want to work at Shopify, DM me. And there's like amazing the different types of folks who wouldn't normally apply, who message me, who are like, hey, I want to find out more, or what about this background that I have, or I'm interested in this area. And it was a really cool way to try to open up more pathways. Of course, it's Twitter and like the people who would follow me, but we're trying to do lots of things to gather as many smart folks as we can from around the world who we can have a conversation with.
I saw the picture with the billboard. Was it?
Yes, that one.
Photoshop or was it Photoshop? But
So it's Photoshop for now, but I'm gonna do a billboard. Yeah.
I think because I have a very close friend of mine. She built an amazing business with Shopify, and she has designed a great life for herself using Shopify. And so when you guys contacted me, I was so excited. But of course, one of the features of Shopify is that it's hidden behind the scene, right? It's like, the biggest company that I feel like no one has heard about, because everyone is using it. All of my friends are using Shopify, but they don't necessarily know you guys. My mom, she's used Shopify many times, but if I tell her, I'm consulting for Shopify, she's never heard of it. And
Yep.
so is that something also that can make it difficult for the hiring process, or also that can be a feature, because what you guys are doing is like so positive, and you are like powering this whole, economy of, people going into entrepreneurship and so on?
Yeah, so you're right. It's a combination of things. One, some people say it's because we're Canadian, right? So we're just like not as out on the top of the roofs shouting every time that we're Shopify. But I actually think it's because we have a particular mantra, which is we're merchant obsessed. We care about our merchants more than anything else. And so if you go to a online store or retail location and you buy something, the Shopify logo won't be like everywhere, because it might be there, right? Maybe some people have like powered by Shopify at the bottom, or maybe the iPad stand might have like a nice Shopify logo, but it's not like out there in your face, because it's all about the merchant. It's not about us. And so if we can make our merchant successful, we will become successful by proxy. And you're right, on the employee and employer side, we are now starting to spend more time to make sure that everybody knows we're an amazing place to work, and that you can have a great career and learn a lot. I tweeted out like a Venn diagram of everywhere I've worked in Shopify, because it's the most different company I've worked at. And we're going to start spending time there, but we're never going to try to overshadow our merchants. It's not about us in that transaction. It's about the merchant.
And you guys, like, your mission is something like so positive, and I find, to be so transformative, that then I guess you have also a lot of people which must be so passionate about the mission, and so that's...
Yeah, it's worse or better than you think, depending on how you think about it, right? Anytime I talk to people at Shopify, I will say, oh, how long have you been at Shopify? And they will say, I've been on Shopify for 3 years, like they've been using the product, and then I'm worked at Shopify for like a year. And so there's many, many employees who, like, it aligns so much with what they do that either they've already been using it as a customer and then they came to the company, or they came to the company like me, and I now run a Shopify store for my kids' school for all their swag, right? All their t-shirts and hats and sweatpants, because it's part, one, it's helped us learn the product, but it's also like a way for us. I raised, $5,000 for my school in 1 week by selling these t-shirts, and then it became a fundraiser, and it's amazing to be able to do that like so quickly.
Awesome.
Wow.
All right. So yeah, if anyone from the audience is interested, shopify.com/careers. And if you apply and you fail the React Native interview, please DM me and we will prep on
Yes.
YouTube for the Shopify
Well,
interviews.
let's go through that. What do you think the top 3 things a React Native engineer should spend time thinking about in order to get ready, let's say, for an interview, or actually just in general? What should they really think about in terms
Yeah.
of building great apps?
So it's something we discussed already before, and I think there are 2 levels. So I think the first level is understanding the APIs and the big picture. So of course, so understanding component models and how they work, and those, because I find this component programming model to be pretty powerful. And then there are like some APIs you need to have some understanding, like the hooks, which do a lot of implicit things. So try to get comfortable with the APIs. And I think so that's level 1. But you tell me, right? I'm just telling you like but and I think the second level is that if you're super comfortable with these APIs, is I think you need now to understand the weaknesses and where are the bottlenecks, and this is what is going to make you successful. And I mean, it's also so my experience working with you guys is the same. Is that I think if you understand the bottlenecks, that's the key to success. I think that.
Yeah, wow, very, very well said. It's a lot about what not to do, not just about what to do. Like some APIs, like modal, shouldn't use at all actually.
Yes.
Um,
So if you love React, you should, or React Native, you should be able to criticize it basically.
yeah, and then practice.
Okay.
Practice.
Practice, right? Yes.
In practice? Okay. And then what if I went further? How are you two staying up to date with mobile engineering? Because you both came from React. How do you make sure that the things you build and the engineering that's going on, like, WWDC comes around or Google I/O, do you stay up to date with that? Are you writing native modules? Like, how do you make sure you're not moving too far away from mobile engineering?
I watched the WWDC sessions, and like I'm using, for example, for one of my apps, a pretty unknown feature like semantic segmentations, where you can like take a picture with the Face ID sensor, and it will like give you a black-white analysis of what the depth is of your face. And then I would say, other than that, just a lot of Twitter. Just
No, but that's good. So
join, it will automatically show up. So I mean, that's how it is for me. I don't know.
yeah, but that means you're following native mobile engineers on Twitter or something else.
I think like if you use a great open source project or one that you really like, then it's pretty easy to find the creators on Twitter, and then I follow them to learn about when their library or like the software that I anyway use, if they get like good updates, they usually tweet about it, and then of course people love to experiment and also tell the world when they have like discovered a new API or something.
Yeah, and I know that you always use like the beta of iOS and stuff like that. You're always on the cutting.
And reanimated too, so cutting edge.
Yes. On my side, I must say I have a good position where people are pushing the information to me because I get so many requests. Yep. So as soon as something comes out, I get an email and can we do it in React Native? Can it be done? And so on. And
has anybody sent you something? Can it be done in React Native and you couldn't do it in React Native? Yes. Okay. What kinds of things?
No, so it's interesting because people think that I'm trying to make a point that everything can be done in React Native, and where actually my goal is more to spend time on the edge of what cannot be done and try to understand better like what we can do about it. And obviously also, since I'm doing this video on YouTube, the frontier of what can be done is pushed always further away.
Imagine like a new episode of Can It Be Done in React Native is being uploaded, and then after 30 minutes, the conclusion is no.
No, it cannot.
Yeah. Have you ever posted? Have you posted that? Like, have you posted videos that it cannot be done?
So there are a couple of examples that come to mind. So one which there is one where a request which I received many times, and currently it cannot be done in a clean way. Because in SVG, React Native SVG, there is some filters which are not available. So everyone is asking me to do the GUI animation where you have two elements that splits in a GUI way, and it requires some blur filters on the SVG element, so that cannot be done. One thing then there are some small things with some APIs. But you see, it's also cool to see. That's why you want to explore what cannot be done in React Native, because also it allows you to see how it evolves. Because now there's so many things at the beginning when I started the first video that you couldn't do, and now you can do, like also with Reanimated 2 and so on. There were a lot of bugs regarding transformations, so even complex transformations in React Native, which there were like lots of bugs fixed. People were complaining they cannot do skewing on Android, stuff like that. So this has been fixed. Still some 3D animation stuff. I feel like there's some issues with consistent perspective between Android and iOS. One thing I've been interested lately is that, so we have Reanimated 2. It's a game changer. We do all these cool things. And then there is another world in React Native, which is a 3D world. So people using OpenGL shaders or Free.js to build these 3D experiences. And currently, these two worlds, so the world of gestures and animations and the 3D world, they talk to each other still through the React Native bridge. And I think, so which is okay, it works, but the performance is less than ideal. And I think one of the next frontiers for when can it be can it be done in React Native is going to be to be able to have these two worlds talking to each other direct without involving the JavaScript thread, and then suddenly it opens up a range of use cases. So that's.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think just Shopify needs to have a need for that, and it happens somehow.
True. I'm feeling like you should have another video series called "It Cannot Be Done in React Native," and you could show these videos that so far it cannot be done, and maybe you'll have the community come back and either help fix it, or the core team or our team, right, working on it so that it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the cool perks about working at Shopify is that in the Slack channel, you can talk to Christophe Maguera. So that's nice. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that because it's going to get spammed like crazy, but it's quite a privilege. You can write him a little message, and so that's nice. Aran, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, and continue the good work, both of you. Remotion, Reanimated, Can It Be Done in React Native? It's really helping the community, and always, message me, let me know how we can help even more.
All right, awesome.
Really cool.
And
Thanks
if people are interested, shopify.com/careers.
Always, and then DM me or any of you, and then send it to me.
All right, perfect.
Sounds good.
All right, talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Ciao.